will find a soul despair.
All right, thank you for that good singing. All right, who has a request this evening or a Thanksgiving? Jim. All right, let's pray for Jim Zasco. Looks like he had a bit of a fall, scraped up and broke up a little maybe, I don't know. And so let's pray for Jim that he'd heal up and wouldn't have any trouble with this. Juanita.
Liliana, I haven't heard anything new, but just keep her encouraged.
All right, let's pray for Liliana. And we think she's in California still. So let's pray for our little sister. She'd be faithful and God would help her and deliver her from trouble. Yes, Wayne.
I just want to thank everybody for the blessing and the work of me, my daughters, this Monday, and a lot of other times too.
All right. Yeah, let's continue to pray for Wayne and his daughters, Christy and Esther, and their families and all, that they be encouraged and strengthened. And Wayne's thankful for encouragement and all. Jerry, Luke.
Sister now asked us to continue to pray for his mother. She's in the hospital with a kidney infection, for his grandmother and father, and for his kidney transplant. And then for Justina and Grace, who survived cancer once again. Nancy and Grace Michaels, and the rest of his family, Roy Bullock.
All right, let's pray for Cipriano's requests, for Roy Polak, for his mom and dad, for his kidney transplant, possibly, and for his other friends and family. So let's pray for Cipriano and his requests. Chris.
I haven't heard from Ed Dick in a while. He hasn't been returning my calls. So Ed Dick.
Okay. All right, let's pray for Ed Dick. Good to see you tonight, Justice.
It's good to see you too. Talitha isn't feeling well, and neither is my Uncle Tyler. So could you guys pray for them?
So Talitha and Tyler?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, let's pray for Talitha and Tyler also. Yes, Gina.
On 5:30 on Sunday, all the ladies who are helping the plan, the ladies rally, we can meet here.
So 5:30 this coming Sunday before church meetings. If your ladies like to be here for planning for the rally and getting details worked out, I assume, stuff like that. So, all right, this coming Sunday at 5:30 for the ladies. Eric.
We were going to try to set up a special offering for Wayne Cobb and help offset some of his medical expenses and stuff with Betty, but he said he'd much prefer if people would just donate to a scholarship fund in Betty's name for the Church Academy to help some of the other kids out to be able to maybe go to this Christian school that wouldn't be able to otherwise. So people want to keep that in mind.
Okay, all right. All right, in lieu of sending things directly to Wayne and family, then perhaps towards the school scholarship. Is that what?
Yep.
Get that right? All right. So see probably the school. So Dan, yep. All right. Mike.
Pray for Florence where she can get the proper medical care because she's been fighting with the insurance and fighting with doctors, and we greatly appreciate it. And keep praying for me so I can continue to get healthy and clear. I'll find out next month what the doctor says.
All right, so let's pray for Mike and also for Florence, and their health needs be cleared up and straightened away. Luke.
Keep the school in your prayers as well. And we're still getting inquiries about students coming, and we'd love to get more students, so we get good families.
All right, let's do remember to pray for Church Academy, the school, and have the right students and more of them, and reach families and all. Yep. Sarah.
The game night that got moved to this Tuesday, the Padillas are hosting it this time. So it'll be at the Padillas house at 6 on Tuesday. And Shantae would like an RSVP by Sunday. And it'll be kind of the same thing as Daniel and Marion. They'll provide burgers and then everybody else just brings a side. So Tuesday, 6 p.m. at the Padillas, RSVP by Sunday.
Okay.
And bring a lawn chair.
Bring a lawn chair. All right, everybody get that? So if you're planning on being at the Tuesday night games and fellowship, it's going to be at the Padillas this coming Tuesday at 6. Bring food and a lawn chair. And a better attitude, right, Shantae? And a better attitude, right? No, it was the last one was at Moriarty's, and it was really, really good. Yeah, it was lots of fun. So this coming Tuesday at the Padillas, and any questions, I suppose you could see Shantae or Miguel. Are you going to be involved in that, or? Okay, good. All right. All right, sounds good. Sarah.
One more. We're also having a balloon race breakfast on Saturday. So if you want to come to the balloon races, we're gonna meet here at 4:20 in the parking lot, and then we'll drive and go to the balloons, and then we'll come back here and have breakfast. If you don't wanna come for the balloons, you're still welcome to come for breakfast. We're gonna meet back here probably around 8:15-ish, and then just bring something for breakfast. But yeah, and it will be, if you do come to the balloons, we do park where there's a little bit of hiking, walking involved, so just keep that in mind if you do decide to come to the balloons.
All right, so this coming, is it Saturday you said?
Yeah.
This coming? All right, so if you'd like to be here at 4:15, that's in the morning, I assume.
Yes.
And then you can head over there, bring good walking shoes and a jacket. All right, sounds good. And breakfast here at 8:15, 8:30. If you can't make the balloons, you can bring some food and eat with everybody here. All right. Any other public announcements? Julia, what's your public announcement here tonight? All right. All right, pray for Julia's Aunt Marilyn, that she'd be feeling better. All right, well, we'll stop right there, and if there are other requests, we'll pray for them in our groups.
Good evening. I was going to try to go through all this lesson tonight before it's done, but I'm looking at the time and we have a half hour in here together, so I think we'll probably only get halfway. We'll do halfway next week. So how many of you are probably familiar with the book of Esther, the book of Esther in the Old Testament? You think about that, it's only 8 chapters long, and it's the key verse. We'll just do a summation at the beginning. We're going to look at the four main characters in this book. But the key verse is probably Esther chapter 4 and verse 14. And if you have trouble finding Esther, it's not in the right spot in the Bible, in my opinion, because it's before Psalms. And in my opinion, it should be back there by the minor prophets time-wise. It's more accurate back there, but they put it before Psalms. And this book takes place somewhere around 483 BC. King Ahasuerus, or King Xerxes, it's easier to say Xerxes, so I'll probably use that name more often. But his reign was from 486 BC to 465 BC, and he's the king that has the contest, and Esther becomes the queen. Anyway, in chapter 4, verse 14, Esther becomes the queen, and they're in a situation where the Jewish people are threatened, and Mordecai, Esther's uncle, or cousin technically, stepdad, foster parent, however you want to say it, he comes up to Esther and he tells her this in verse 14, "For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knows whether you art come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" And so this is the key verse of this whole book. And we're going to see in this book, it's the only book in the Bible that never mentions the name of God. It's not mentioned anywhere in the whole book, but this is a book where you can definitely see the hand of God working in these situations that happen in this book. And so God does put people in places, and if those people don't do what he wants them to do, it's not like God says, "Oh no, now I'm going to be defeated, it's going to mess up." He's got a backup plan, and Mordecai knew that. He goes, "Well, if you're not going to do it, God's going to find some way else to do it. I know that he will, but who knows whether he has put you in this place for such a time as this." And so the four main characters in this drama that unfolds in this book are King Xerxes, the Queen Esther, Haman, and he's called the Agagite, and Mordecai. And so in the first chapters 1 and 2, we have the story of Esther becoming queen. In chapters 3 through 7, we have Haman becoming the renegade. And in chapters 8 through 10, we have Mordecai becoming the hero. This book is believed to have been penned by Ezra or Mordecai for historical records. And I thought it was interesting that one time Benjamin Franklin shared this book of the Bible, the book of Esther, without context. He gave it to some French officials that were not familiar with the Bible, and they thought it was one of the greatest stories ever written. I mean, because of the way that it goes back and forth, intrigue, and they didn't know it was from the Bible, and he later on told them it was. And this is also where we get the beginning of the Jewish festival of Purim. And the word Purim in Hebrew, it means lots, like they cast lots and the lot fell on. And so basically it's chance, the book of chance, or like circumstance and odds. And so Esther is called the Purim scroll by the Hebrew people. This festival was inaugurated by Queen Esther and Mordecai and is celebrated every year on the 14th day of the 12th month, Adar. And the name Esther itself relates the message of this book. Her name means hiddenness. And so we see here hiddenness in Esther, the book of Purim, or the book of chance, or the book of lots, and it denotes the seeming randomness of events and the roles that mere chance interwoven in the characters' lives play. And so the point becomes clear when you observe the book's teaching that these coincidences, or such a thing we look at as coincidences, are more serendipitous or more providential, and they're actually God working behind the scenes. And even though his name is not mentioned, he is at work in every action and event in Esther and also in all history. And we can see that. And in this book, we see people that have their own wills and desires. And we serve an omnipotent God. And he knows the choices that they're going to make. He knows their weaknesses. He knows their strengths. He knows their character. And even though they're all doing their own thing, God is, he's working through all these things to orchestrate a miracle for the Jewish nation. He orchestrates their deliverance. And so, to sum up the book, we start off with King Xerxes, and in the first chapter, in the second chapter, he has this big feast, and they get drunk. They have a 180-day feast, and then they have a 7-day drinking thing, and then he tries to call the queen out to his drunken buddies and show her off to his friends, and she doesn't want to come, obviously, and so he says, and then he gets his drunk advisors, hey, this is going to set a bad precedent. All the girls are going to be disobeying their husbands and not respecting them. You got to put your foot down. And so what am I going to do? Well, you need to get a new queen. And so how are we going to do that? Well, let's have a Miss America contest or beauty contest. I guess it's Miss Persia contest. Anyway, and so we'll just round everybody up, and the prettiest girls are going to come here, and you spend the night with them, and whatever one you want to marry, that's the one that's going to be the queen, and Esther becomes that queen. And so in the meantime, there's this guy Haman, and he's generationally hated the Jews, and he doesn't like Mordecai because Mordecai doesn't bow down to him and respect him, and so he builds his gallows behind his house, and he wants to kill all the Jews, and he tries to get in on the king's good side and get a proclamation made that on such and such a day they're going to kill all these Jews, and so they find out about it. Esther goes to the king at great risk to herself and exhorts him not to. Well, first of all, she exhorts him to have a dinner, and she invites to the dinner Haman and the king, and then she doesn't tell him right away what was going on, and finally she tells him that somebody's trying to kill her, and who is it? It's this Haman guy right here. And so then Haman gets hung on his own gallows, and the laws of the Medes and the Persians are written in a way that once a law was made, it could not be changed, and so they couldn't take away the law that had already been put into place where the Jews could be killed on this certain day, but they made a provisional law that the Jews could defend themselves, and so the Jews ended up killing the people that were trying to kill them, and Mordecai was put into the position that Haman had previously held. So we'll look at these four guys. First of all, let's look at King Xerxes, and if you go to chapter 1, in verse 4, this is about that big banquet that he held. In chapter 1, verse 4, it says, when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 180 days, so 180 days. And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people. So the 180-day feast was for the government officials. And then he made one for the whole, I guess, everybody in Shushan, which was the city where the palace was. And unto the great and the small, 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace. And it talks about the decorations. There was white and green and blue. So obviously either a Jets or a, I don't know what color fan, NFL fan he was there. Fastened with cords of fine linen and purple to silver rings and pillars of marbles. The beds were of gold and silver upon a pavement of red and blue and white and black and marble. And they gave them to drink of vessels of gold. And the vessels were all different from one another. And the royal wine in abundance according to the state of the king. And usually there was a limit. I don't know if there was a 5-drink limit or 3-drink limit, whatever. But this case, there was no limit. It was an open bar. And the drinking was according to the law. None did compel. For so the king had appointed to all his officers of his house that they should do according to every man's pleasure. And so if everybody gets to drink as much as they want to drink, they're going to drink more. Also Vashti, the queen, made a feast for the women in the royal house which belonged to the king Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Hezethar, and Caracas, the 7 chamberlains. Oh, I missed one. Abagatha and Bigtha and Harbona, and that served the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princess her beauty, for she was fair to look upon. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. And then the king said to the wise men, which knew his times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew the law and judgment. And the next unto him was a bunch more names. I'm not going to read them. If you want to read them, you can. All right. In verse 15, what shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to the law, because she has not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains? And so what we can see about the king was that he was concerned with having a good time. He was about having a good time. And you can imagine the atmosphere in this place if you've been around people that like to drink. And many of us have relatives or maybe have come out from that background. And it's a lot of fun for those that are involved in it, but it's not fun for those that have to deal with those people. And after 7 days of partying, then he makes this request for the queen to come. And I don't know, there's some commentaries that think that he wanted to parade her naked in front of his friends. I don't think that was quite the case, but obviously he was going to show her off. And this is not the ideal thing. Your wife is your own, and you shouldn't just share her with everybody else. And I see people that have this attitude, sometimes even in the church, where they like to show off whatever beauty that they think that their wife has, or things, or share it with everybody in the way that they dress. And that's not a good attitude to have, and you're not valuing her like you should. And he was very prideful, and most likely Vashti did not want to expose herself to the gaping and the lust of a whole room of inebriated men. And I'm pretty sure that they wouldn't have dared to touch her or done anything, but still, that's not the environment that you want to be in. And you look at the way that he treated the rest of the women in the country. So he has this contest, and this is not this is where they go in the evening after being purified for like 6 months or 12 months or whatever it is, and they get access to any of the clothes they want, any of the ointments and different beauty treatments that they want, and then they get their chance with the king. They go in at night and they leave in the morning. And so you can imagine what's going on in the room. And there's a lot of things that happen in this book that if you portrayed it in a movie, you'd probably have to restrict the age of those that watch the movie, but it's kind of like implied. This is what's happening, and these things are happening here. And so Esther becomes friends with the head of the guy that's in charge of the women, and he gives her good advice about what the king likes. He knows what the king likes and what his type is, I guess. And so whatever happens, of all the women that tried out for this position, Esther wins the job, and she becomes the queen. And then the rest of the women that did not win, they get to go back home, right? No, they're put into the king's harem, all right? And they're just kept as, I guess, sex slaves for the rest of their lives. They can't be shared with anybody else because they were once with the king. And so that's the end of their. And so he doesn't really have, it's a bad thing if you lose this contest. It wasn't very good. And their family couldn't even see them. And then the other thing is, one night, this man in chapter 6, we'll go to chapter 6, just to give you some background on this, there were 2 eunuchs that worked in the castle, and Mordecai overheard them plotting to kill the king. And so he exposed the plot. The guys were caught. The guys were killed. The eunuchs were killed. And one night in chapter 6, he can't sleep. All right? And so on that night, the king, verse 1, could not sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And I can't imagine anything more boring to try to put you to sleep than this. Maybe if we listened to some old sermons on YouTube or something like that, that'd probably put you to sleep. I know that would work for Eric if he played my sermons, because he always falls asleep in my sermons. So anyway, and it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hands on the king Ahasuerus. And the king said, "What honor and dignity has been done to Mordecai for this?" Then said the king's servants that ministered to him, "There is nothing done for him." And the king said, "Who is in the court?" And so evidently by this time it's morning, and Haman's on his way, and he's on his way to ask the king about, like he's really thinking he's special. He's like, man, I am it. And he's still mad at this Mordecai, because Mordecai doesn't bow to him like everybody else does when he goes through the streets. And so it's so ironic that he comes in this morning and the king says, "What happened to reward Mordecai?" And so he walks in and he asked them, and the king Xerxes, he asks Haman, he goes, "What should I do if I wanted really to bless somebody and to reward them? And what should I do for them?" And so, Mordecai, Haman's like, "Oh, I know what you're going to do. You're going to give him one of your best robes, and you're going to put him on the king's donkey, and you're going to lead him through the streets, and you're going to have one of the king's highest officials say, 'This is how the king honors those that he wants to honor,' And so, because Haman's thinking, man, this is going to happen to me. And then the king says, "You know what? You go and do that for Mordecai." What? His mortal enemy, the guy he's trying to kill, now he has to lead through the streets with the king's robe, and the king, this is who the king wants to honor. Can you imagine how hard a punishment that would be? I've seen a few of those people on when they want to punish their children. They get a big T-shirt, and and they put both kids in the T-shirt together so they can get along. All right, and this is kind of what Haman's doing, or Xerxes is doing with Mordecai and Haman, but it didn't work. It just made it worse. All right, and I don't know. I'd probably make it worse too if I had to be in a shirt with my sister. I'd probably one of us would probably get hurt. All right. Anyway, it's probably me. I'd probably get hurt, actually. Anyway, the second thing I would look at is the portrait of Haman, and he was the enemy of the Jews. In chapter 8, verse 1, it says, "On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, and Esther had told what he was unto her." All right, and so it came out that he was the enemy of the queen. Now in chapter 3, verse 1, and I found this very, very interesting. The Bible is such a rich text. The more you study it, the more you find out. And I didn't even know some of these things until I studied it out this time. After these things, in Esther 3, verse 1, did the king Xerxes, or Ahasuerus, promote Haman the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. And so he's called an Agagite. And so you know why he's called an Agagite? He was a descendant of King Agag, the Amalekite. Well, where have we heard that name, King Agag? Well, we got to go back to 1 Samuel, the 15th chapter. But before we do that, we need to go to Deuteronomy, the 25th chapter. And when the children of Israel were coming out of Egypt, and they were trying to get to the promised land, there was a country that caused them trouble. In Deuteronomy, the 25th chapter, verse 17, God says this. This is God speaking. "Remember what Amalek did unto thee by the way when ye were come forth out of Egypt, how he met thee by the way, and he smote the hindmost of thee, even all that were feeble behind thee, when thou wast faint and weary, and he feared not God. Therefore it shall be, when the Lord thy God has given thee rest from all thine enemies round about in the land which the Lord thy God gives thee for an inheritance to possess it, that you will blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven, and thou shalt not forget it. And so this guy was a low-down Amalek, this nation. They did, it's kind of like the coyotes and the lions and stuff. They pick on the weak and the feeble that were trailing behind, and they just killed them. I don't understand what their purpose in that was. I guess just to weaken Israel. But in 1 Samuel, the 15th chapter, God gives King Saul, some very specific instructions of how he's supposed to treat these Amalekites. And he's not forgotten how Amalek has attacked and treated his people. And he's going to take care of it here in 1 Samuel, the 15th chapter. So in 1 Samuel 15, through Samuel, the prophet of God, he says unto Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore hearken thou unto the voice of the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, how he laid wait for him in the way when he came up from Egypt. Now go and smite Amalek, and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both men and women, and infant and suckling, and ox and sheep and camel and ass. And so he's supposed to utterly wipe them out. Take them out. Was that what happened? Go to a few verses later. Look at verse 7. And Saul smote the Amalekites from Havilah until thou comest to Shur, that is over against Egypt. And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. And so, evidently, not all of the people he killed. But Saul and the people spared Agag, and the best of the sheep, and of the oxen, and of the fatlings, and of the lambs, and of all that was good, and they would not utterly destroy them, but everything that was vile and refuse, that they destroyed utterly. And the word of the Lord came unto Samuel, saying, It repents me that I have set up Saul to be king, for he has turned back from the following me, and has not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto the Lord all night. And when Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning, it was told Samuel, saying, Saul came to Carmel, to behold, he set him up on a place, and has gone about. He's passed on and gone down to Gilgal. So Samuel came and said, Saul. And Saul said to him, Blessed be thou of the Lord. I have performed the commandment of the Lord. And, when somebody gets caught red-handed, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just doing exactly what you told me to do, Mom. But this is kind of the attitude that Saul has here. I have performed the commandment of the Lord. And Samuel, like a good parent, well, what does this bleating of the sheep mean? I hear a bunch of sheep. Who are these sheep? And what is the lowing of these oxen I hear? Oh, those. And Saul said, they have brought them from the Amalekites for the people. Now notice how he says, I have kept the commandment of the Lord. The people, I wasn't me, it was the people, spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice to the Lord thy God, and the rest we have utterly destroyed. And Samuel said to Saul, Stay, and I will tell you what the Lord has said to me. And he said unto him, Say on. And Samuel said, When you were little in your own eyes, then were you not made the head of the tribes of Israel, and the Lord anointed thee king over Israel? And the Lord sent thee on a journey and said, Go and utterly destroy the sinners and the Amalekites, and fight against them till they are consumed. Why didn't you obey the voice of the Lord and fly upon the spoil? But you have done evil in the sight of the Lord. And Saul said to Samuel, Yea, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord. I have gone the way which God sent me. And I have brought Agag the king of Amalek, and I have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took the spoil, and the sheep, and the oxen, and the chief of the things, which should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God in Gilgal. And they had a good reason for it. We're going to use these as sacrifices for God. We're going to put these to good use. And Samuel said, has the Lord as a great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as a sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is an iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king. And so God is way more interested in our heart, in our obedience, in our love for him, than he is in how much you can bring to the table and in worldly possessions or anything like that. But anyway, I said all that to say that this guy here had been a descendant of Agag. And even though it says they utterly destroyed him, they obviously did not. And what's interesting is that Mordecai is a descendant of Saul. Isn't that ironic? And you say, well, where does it say that? It doesn't say that in Esther, but in Esther, the 3rd chapter, it gives a lineage of Mordecai, and it does go back to Kish, all right? And Saul is the son of Kish. But in Iraq today, in the city of Hamadan, Iraq, there is a tomb, and it's called the Tomb of Esther and Mordecai. And on the side of that tomb is an inscription, and the inscription is the lineage of Mordecai. And it goes back, Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Shemitah, of Baana, of Elah, the son of Micah, the son of Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, the son of Kish. And so here we have Haman, the son of Agag, of an Amalekite, who is supposed to be wiped out by Saul, and Saul disobeyed. And now we have this face-off, and it's causing problems years later because Mordecai has to deal with this problem that his great-great-grandpa wouldn't deal with. All right, we have to split at this time, and we need to go our separate ways for prayers. Ladies can be dismissed.